but it is. It's just, I've had a lot of problems with my kids just trying to make them go to school, and I know they hate it. I know that it's something that they're obliged by law to do, but as soon as they're legally able to leave the educational system, we take them out. And that's why most of them have gotten out by the time they're 15.
What'd you think of the show? I don't know if you got any recordings of it. I was at the show in New York back in February.
I didn't hear any recordings of it.
The first, there seemed to be some technical problems in the first set with the PA, but then after that they pretty much nailed it down, and it was, the place was packed. It was a great show.
Well, did you enjoy it?
Absolutely.
Well,
we did it up. We rented a limo and really splurged to go over there and even put on some ties and, you know.
Well, that's called concert going as a Dada concept.
Yeah, really. You know, Mike Keneally was sporting some serious attitude that night.
Yeah. Well, you know, he's on tour in Europe with Dweezil and Ahmet, and he's not using a hat this time.
Oh.
That was always his good luck hat, and I know he's still got it, but I think he's branching out into new directions now.
It was a really great show, and I like to see more things like along the lines between there's a nice mixture of rock, and then with the orchestral stuff worked out great.
Well, I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, Mike from New Jersey, thank you for calling East Coast Live, man.
Be well.
Give him the fax number again.
Oh, yeah. 704-570-1369. And incidentally, any fax you send in tonight, even if I don't get a chance to read it on the air, I'm going to fax to Frank. Every fax I get, I will fax to Frank. Lots of faxes coming in from people. I didn't even realize that, I guess, Jay Leno somehow is listening out in California, because I didn't even know he knew about it. So let's go.
What I want to know is how come you're getting faxes from Saudi Arabia and Japan?
And Korea. I don't know. I have no idea. Let's go to our next call. And I'll tell you, this is a surprise. I'm going to introduce this guy, Frank. You know him. It goes back to your label, Discreet Records. This is a good friend of mine and a frequent guest in this show from Michigan. It is Ted Nugent.
Alan, Frank.
Hey, the Deer Slayer.
Oh, yes, Frank. Can I get you an order for venison tonight?
Ted, welcome.
You know, the best thing about venison is if you mix it up with regular hamburger, it's really great on a barbecue.
We call that the Ted Nugent Whackmaster Helper. Well, I'll tell you what, Frank. You are a breath of fresh air from the Gomer Zone of California, even acknowledging that venison is palatable. Thank you very much.
No, I like venison.
It's good for you, man.
Well,
it's a pleasure to speak with you, Frank. I just want to explore.
Wait, Ted. Frank's saying something. What would you say, Frank?
You know, I like the way venison tastes, but I'm always concerned that, since it comes from the wild, that it might have parasites in it. What do you do about worrying about wildlife parasites?
Well, most of the parasites that infect wildlife are internal, and they don't affect the meat source at all. The only parasite that is really causing a problem nationwide now is the Lyme tick. And again, that is not effective to the meat at all. It only affects a person if that person, in fact, becomes a carrier of the tick itself. So we've found, I have never eaten anything here at the Nugent house, Frank, except game that I've killed myself, and I'm so damn healthy, it's scary.
Yeah, well, it's probably safer to eat venison than it is to eat the hamburgers at Jack in the Box. So.
I guarantee you that.
What were you getting ready to say, Ted, when you were both talking at the same time? You were saying something about it.
I got to tell you, Alan, I appreciate you giving me a call tonight. I just came back from a super event. We had our annual, what we call the Ted Nugent Camp for Kids Family Conservation Rally. I literally just got back to the house and took off my sweaty clothes from performing a bunch of hunting songs for these kids and their families. And it's an extreme pleasure to be on with Frank Zappa, because I don't know if you remember, Frank, but when you guys toured Michigan with the Mother's Invention back in '67, it was me behind the wheel of the Amboy Dukes van that drove you guys all over the state of Michigan. Do you remember that?
Yeah, but I also remember when we worked with you at that club.
The Fifth Dimension.
And while you were playing, Motorhead went out on the floor and pretended to have an epileptic seizure.
I don't think he was pretending.
And Tooth, Fang, and Claw was on your label, right? Discreet Records.
That's right. I recorded on Frank's label. We did The Call of the Wild in '73 and Tooth, Fang, and Claw in '74, or vice versa. It's hard to remember back that specific, but yes, it was on Discreet Records.
Now, did you just use his label, or did you use Frank's studio, or did Frank produce it? How did that work?
No, what was the guy's name, Frank, that was handling all that?
Herb Cohen.
Herb Cohen, yeah. Herb Cohen actually saw us perform at some Midwest club and saw the following that we had, and he worked with the producer I was working at the time, and I don't know the gory details of those logistics, but all I know is that those are two very famous records of mine. They're in my youth, and we performed some songs off those tonight, in fact.
You know, just wanted to not embarrass you, Ted, because you and I have talked about this before, but I don't think...
be embarrassed.
Well, you know, Frank, I don't think heard this story. The song back in 1966, Journey to the Center of Your Mind, which was your very first hit with the Amboy Dukes.
Right.
And it makes a lot of sense to me, and anybody who's heard Ted before knows this. He doesn't do drugs. He didn't know the song was about acid. He really, at that time, he's only 16 years old. He had no idea it was about drugs. Both you and Frank are the most anti-drug rock musicians or musicians, period, that I know of.
Make it official right now on East Coast Live that I've always been a big fan of Frank's, and I don't mean in a shallow sense as a fan, but as a person who believed in what you did musically, and certainly your sense of humor, because I am the funniest white man in the free world. And I think I got a lot of that from the fun that you guys retained in your music, and I've always aspired to do that myself, and I think what you did with the Mothers was a big influence on me.
Well, I appreciate that. And, you know, anybody who's still got a sense of humor in the 90s, you know, you've got to protect it, because
it's a beautiful thing,
that's going on in the society seems to mitigate against having a good laugh.
Well, the bottom line is music is supposed to come from a creative vision with very few inhibitions, and certainly I've seen way too many guys take the lumps because they allowed themselves to become inhibited when it came to sense of humor, and I just never let myself do that.
Yeah, well, there's nothing better than laughing.
Hallelujah.
Ooh, juba, juba, juba.
Yeah, when was the last time you guys actually communicated in any form?
Well, I think I spanked your son one night in L.A. Yeah, Dweezil came down. We were down jamming with Sam Kinison, of all people.
Yeah.
And Dweezil came down, and I got to spend a little bit of time with him. He's quite a guitar player himself. And your daughter, would it be Moon Unit?
Yeah.
A dangerous young gal. I have two daughters myself, Frank, so I can sit here and weep with you at the prospects of these sexual beasts running amok with our names.
Yeah, Moon is running amok in Europe right now with her boyfriend, who is a bass player in a German classical orchestra.
Well, that's great. Well, how old is she now?
She is 25.
Well, I have a daughter, Star, who's 22, and my daughter, Sasha, is 19. So I'm doing the parent boogie myself. But you got a beautiful daughter. You got some great kids. I read an interview recently, I think it was in Spin magazine, with your youngest boy.
Oh, the youngest boy is Amit.
I think that might have been one of them guys. And he has a wonderful sense of humor, too, so you're doing a fine job. Congratulations.
Oh, yeah. This is a guy who's not afraid to open his mouth on any topic, even if he doesn't know anything about the topic.
I like him already.
Yeah.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, in a station in Raleigh, as a matter of fact, I had your whole family on, and Ahmed said some choice words on my show I can't repeat now. He was just a little kid, and he said some amazing things.
Yeah, well, he's 19 now, and he shaved all of his hair off.
Really?
Yeah. And he's got a tattoo on his arm and a ring in his ear. He used to have a ring in his nose, and he's the lead vocalist in Dweezil's band, and he's an absolute lunatic on stage.
If you're just tuning in, Ted Nugent talking to Frank Zappa. This is Radio History tonight.
Frank, what are you doing these days, boy? I miss your guitar.